ATP Finals Day 1 recap, which started today with the green group. In the early match, Casper Ruud beat Felix Auger-Aliassime in a very close two-set match, 7-6, 6-4, in almost 2 hours, which is a fairly long two-set match. Diving into some of the relevant stats, you can see that the match was an overall very high-quality match, both players hitting well more winners than unforced errors. One of the interesting things I thought was if you looked at where each player was standing on the first serve return, Casper Ruud was standing up much closer to the baseline, less than 3 feet behind the baseline, while Felix Auger-Aliassime was about 6 feet behind the baseline. I think if you had asked me to predict before the start of the match, I would have inverted those numbers and thought that Casper would have been further behind the baseline than Felix would have been, standing up 2 feet, 2.5 feet behind the baseline. Casper Ruud was in a much more aggressive position to return Felix's serve. Felix has a very good first serve, so I found this was somewhat surprising. And similarly, I would have guessed that Felix Auger-Aliassime would have been a little bit more aggressive, perhaps, in where he stood to return Casper's first serve. Looking at some more of the service stats, one of the things that stood out was that Casper Ruud still won 78% of his second serves. That's a very good number. Felix Auger-Aliassime was down at 57%, which is to be expected on your second serve. And I think ultimately what happened in this match was it came down to really pretty much 1 point. Felix Auger-Aliassime could not save the 1 break point that he had to deal with on his serve. Casper Ruud obviously converted it, and that basically explains what happened in the second set. After the match, Felix said, "My back is against the wall. It would have been better for me to start with a win. For Casper, I'm sure it's a big weight off his shoulders. For me, I need to bounce back and play better, play a little bit better. I'm not far from playing well, but there are a few things I can do better." Unfortunately, looking at some of Felix's stats, it is not clear what he can do better. Anytime you have 30 winners and 3 unforced errors, your game has to have been pretty clean. He won 75% of his service points. He was only broken once in 2 sets. Those are all very positive take-home points for Felix. I guess if there's one thing that he perhaps can do better would be on the service return. He only won 24% of return points. And I do wonder, going back to sort of his positioning on the court, if he would consider changing sort of where he stood both for first and second serve returns. On the other hand, Casper said, "I think this is some of the best level that I have played since the US Open." Again, it was a high-quality match. He hit 19 winners to only 3 unforced errors. He has to like that he won 76% of his service points, and he only won 25% of his return points, so only a little bit better than Felix did, but did manage to come away with 1 break of serve. Going into the second match of the day, in a somewhat surprising result, or at least perhaps a somewhat surprising result, Nadal-Fritz beat Rafael Nadal in a fairly straightforward 7-6, 6-1 match in a little over 90 minutes. If you start diving into some of the statistics, Taylor, pretty much dominated Rafa Nadal. One of the big differences which led to the outcome was in second serve points. One, Rafa could only win about 40% of his second serves. That is a dangerous number when you are obviously winning less than half of points in some sort of category. Meanwhile, Nadal-Fritz won a very respectable 78% of his second serves. That is a very good or healthy number on your serve. And to sort of then magnify that, Rafael Nadal faced 9 break points. I guess you could say the good news was that he saved 78% of his break points that he faced. However, the bad news was that he faced 9 total break points. Taylor Fritz was extremely clean on his serve, did not have a break point to deal with, so really did not give Rafael Nadal anything on his serve, and that is why it was a very sort of routine win for Taylor. Diving in a little bit on this, you can see, again, that Taylor Fritz won a total of 35% of return points to Rafa's 21%. And again, that's a big difference. It's why Taylor came away with 2 breaks of serve and really did dominate the match in the first set as well, even though it went to a tiebreak, because Rafa really had just 0 opportunities on Taylor's serve. If you want to look at a little bit about why this might be, let's go to the second serve return position. You can see Taylor Fritz standing right up on the baseline, looking to pounce on Rafa's second serve. He was right up on the baseline, looking to really attack it. But Rafael Nadal, on the other hand, stood extremely far back. I'm always amazed by this stat, but he was more than 13 feet behind the baseline in order to return Taylor's second serve. Rafa does like to do this. He uses this as a strategy to get balls in play, and while this might work on a slow court or on something like clay, where Rafa can then get himself into long, grindy points, it did not work against Taylor Fritz, who used the opportunity to sort of jump all over Rafa, really take the upper hand in the point itself. So I think that this sort of positioning on the second serve does speak volumes and does help illustrate how the match ultimately went. So a little while ago I had made predictions about the ATP Finals. You can pretty much throw them out the window. I had predicted Rafa to win the group and Felix to come in second. Both now sit at 0-1, whereas Casper Ruud and Taylor Fritz are both 1-0. It is probably mathematically impossible now for Rafa and Felix Auger-Aliassime to both advance, as they still have a match against each other, and this would leave one of them with a record of 0-2, and the other one would then have a record of 1-1. Even if they then both won their final matches against the third opponent, one of them would finish at 2-1, and one of them would finish at 1-2. It is theoretically possible for a player with a record of 1-2 to advance. However, for a second place person to have a record of 1-2, it would imply that the first place person went undefeated. Since Rafa Nadal can't go undefeated, it is virtually impossible for both of my predictions to advance to the semifinal knockout round. So I guess all I can say is bring on the red group. Play will be tomorrow, and let's hope that my predictions do a little bit better. So what did you think about day 1 of the ATP Finals? How did your predictions go? What do you see happening for the red group? Leave your comments below. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching.